So let's turn our attention to my favourite event, the Eubank Jr. Conor Benn fight on the weekend. Reactions, fellas?
I want to get your reaction first. Just tell me what you thought, because I know you were not particularly in favour of this fight happening, but what's your thoughts on the aftermath of that?
I think it was, when I watched it on Sunday, I didn't watch it live.
Simon.
I think it was a spectacular piece of promotion, remarkable promotion. I think it was a relatively significant middleweight in decline against a yet-to-be-determined welterweight. And I think it was a great scrap. I think it was an honest fight between two guys that left it all in the ring. Was it a world-class level? No. Was it as good as Callum Smith versus Josh Boazzi? No, I don't think so. Did it fulfil what most people thought it would fulfil, or hoped it would fulfil? Yeah.
Listen, I always thought it was going to be a very competitive fight, but as it unfolded, and you saw, I think, for one, Conor Benn done better in that fight than I thought he was ever going to do. And I think he showed a lot of character in that fight as well.
He did.
As did Chris Eubank Jr. I looked at him at the end of that 9th round and I thought, he's got nothing left. It was like he was punching through treacle there, and he found something from somewhere, like, you know, in those last few rounds. And that 12th round, by the way, was one of the best 12th rounds I think I've seen. And you're right in what you say. You're looking at levels and sort of world-class levels and where it's sat, but you go, with what was on the line, the emotions, the feuds, the history of the two, and the way them two kids delivered, I thought it was one of the best fights I've seen in modern times in a British ring.
Boys, pick up the slack.
You know how much I respect you. You know how knowledgeable you are at boxing as well, and I totally get your reasons for not coming. I can't believe you didn't watch it live.
He listens to it on the talkSPORT.
Do you know what?
YouTube
It was one of the great nights we've had in British boxing. You're right, it's not world-class elite level, but what the two of them showed in there was they backed up all the hype, the circus, the nonsense in many ways, the hoopla that we'd had. Yeah. The two of them bared their souls in there that night. Conor Benn was magnificent. Lost, yes. Eubank won, I thought, closely.
So they should, though, Adam, by the way. But for the kind of opportunity they were being given on the back of the legacies that they had to fulfil.
Yes.
So they should, by the way.
So they should. But 70-odd thousand in Tottenham, having an amazing night. More theatre where Senior turns up. The four of them together. The ring walks were amazing. And the fight was just brutal, gruelling, tough. And you know what? It was just fabulous to be there. It was one of those moments I think I'll never forget. And I have so much respect for fighters, and to see them go through what they did, I tell you what, I was so impressed.
Yeah, I thought I was the only one that somebody who's in boxing that didn't attend. I had the opportunity to attend. Like yourself, I didn't go to watch it, nor did I watch it on telly. I didn't. I was too tired from working, from training. I got a lot of fighters. I didn't go, basically. I actually went to sleep and I woke up 2 a.m. to see the results and people posting.
Did you watch the fight after?
I've watched it since then, and boy, what a slugfest.
Indeed.
People got their monies. Human beings were bloodthirsty, and they sure got what they paid for. And I have to commend both boxers. They left it all in the ring.
Yeah.
They represented their fathers' legacies. Yeah.
Yep.
And basically, to sum it up, boxing won.
Simon, I've got to throw this to you, Simon.
British boxing won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris Eubank Senior.
Yeah.
Rocked up. No one expected it. They thought it was totally gone. What was your thoughts on that when you first saw him there?
Not surprised. For a variety of reasons.
Oh, come on.
I could be mean-spirited and say because he's a narcissist and he couldn't miss it, or I could turn around and say that I listened to the press conference that Chris Eubank Jr. spoke in, where I think he spoke about pain, and he spoke about pain in such a way that anyone could not connect with.
That really
when he talked about his brother being buried in the desert and his brother's young boy, Raheem, wanted to know where his father is, and then talked about his pain with his own father.
Yeah.
If ever a family have suffered trauma like this, should have a moment together, then it's probably these guys.
But I will tell you that relationship between Chris Eubank Jr. and Senior was very fractured, and they hadn't spoke. This wasn't all made up, and they knew that it was going to happen. This was a last-minute thing that happened, and I think that benefited Junior so much.
So much. And Simon, you're absolutely right. Father-son relationship. Spencer's right as well. It was so fractured, so difficult. How Chris spoke in that final press conference. Everything else was premeditated by Chris Eubank. He controlled the media. He was fantastic with Eddie. It was all of that. But when he broke down a little bit, or let the guard down and let his pain out.
I was touched by that.
I think Senior saw that, and I think he had to be there. But did we expect it? No way. It was just one of those moments that just will live with us forever. And it was fabulous that he was there.
Talking about drama and elements of box office, what do you make of the Billy Joe Saunders, the rap monitor, going into, or potentially going into, Eubank's dressing room? I mean, people were suggesting to me that Robert Smith was nervous about the outcome of this. I'm not entirely sure why the British Boxing Board of Control would allow Billy Joe to be part of that sort of
he can't
messing
be
about.
Because he hasn't got a licence, so he's not. So therefore, he couldn't go in there and be part of that Chris Eubank Jr. team, because he's got to have a British Boxing Board of Control licence to be out to go in there and oversee whatever it was, and that's the reasons why he was not allowed to do that. I think the junior and his team may have wanted to do that just to rattle him a little bit, but Conor Benn, sorry, wanted him to go in there just to rattle him a little bit, but Eubank's team they were straight on that. They understood it because he doesn't have that licence.
But do you think it was clever from Eubank because he knew that Billy Joe was being earmarked to go in and check his reps, didn't say anything about it, but stopped him at the door.
It's genius.
Not having any of that.
But that was marketing genius the whole way through, though. Eubank Jr. has been
from
incredible.
Start to finish. And you know what? Not only was he genius with the media, he was, the last 3 or 4 rounds of that fight, he was a genius in the ring. How he gutted it out, honestly, with the restraints of the weight and all that he had on him. And he just did something that we probably haven't seen throughout his whole career.
How do you feel about that observation, Spence? Because you've been banging on about the fact that Eubank has fought at 160 for the last 5 or 6 years.
Yep.
And now we're making a case for the fact he's gutted it out at a weight class that he's been fighting in for the last 6 years.
So what do I make of that? I make of it that he's won 60 days are totally over. I think that it's now got to that stage where he struggles so much for it. And that was evident, you know, he posted the pictures that we saw. But going into that 9th round, I agree with Adam. Going into that 9th round, halfway through that round, I'm watching him going, this kid is done. He's done, like, he's finished. Where he found that strength, that mental strength to pull himself through those last, and especially those last 2 rounds, round 11 and round 12 were 2 of the best rounds of boxing I've seen in a long, long time. But that was because I was watching, you know, not just the physical side of this here, but the mental side of it as well. These two were leaving it all in there. But where were they finding it from? It was a brutal battle from the opening.
Well, we're comfortable with the scorecards, fellas.
I thought it was 115, 130.
That's what I thought.
In favour of Chris Eubank Jr. I thought the scorecards were slightly wide. I mean, there was a couple of rounds there that were subjective, could have gone one way or the other, but all 3 judges come up with that score, 116, 112. But I thought it was a little harsh on Conor and his efforts. I thought it was, 115, 130.
At the end, I didn't care who won it. I thought it was such a great advert for 2 gladiators just getting down and giving it everything into the ring. But as far as the scores went, I was surprised that all 3 judges had it exactly the same. It was a little wide. I thought maybe Eubank by a couple. The right man won, but I was surprised they all had it by 4.
Let's hear what Chris Eubank Senior had to say, and then we can react to it.
You know, I was always going to be here for my son, irrespective of what you thought. I mean, it's a show. So suspense is part of the game. Now, the performance, championship rounds, standing toe-to-toe, the credit I'm going to give to Conor. I told you he was a superior fighter, but he shouldn't be fighting at 160 or 156. He's a 147 fighter. What couldn't he do around the world? He's been destroyed by the people who are handling him, and they have to be brought to account. Do your job. Do your job. Do your job.
OK. Strong words, as always, from Chris Eubank Senior. What do you make of that, Don? What's your takeaway from what you said?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone should know, he should know. He was always pro to build up to the fight. That was his concerns about the weight for Conor, not just for his son, for Chris Jr., for Conor.
Well, his initial conversation was about legalised murder, wasn't it? 2 years ago, he was talking about watching his son being boiled down.
Yeah.
And now he's switched it on to Conor as well.
Yeah, because it works both ways. In terms that he's going up 2 weights, right, Conor, to fight against her.
And he's been fighting at 154, hasn't he?
Yeah, that's equally as dangerous. Someone coming down, like his son coming down. The danger is there.
So do you think what Chris Eubank Senior said is right? Not that he has a right to say it. It's actually right in principle.
Well, yeah.
Is this the best we've seen of Chris Eubank, or is it the best of what's left of Chris Eubank?
Ooh.
Like Chris Eubank said after the fight, he said, I knew I had this in me, but I needed somebody to bring it out.
Yeah.
And those were his words. And yeah, he's
Great
always
point.
had that in.
Great point, Don, and great question, Simon.
Yeah.
Listen, I think
it was. I think it was his best performance.
Well, my concerns, Adam, is when you have a fight like that at 35 years of age, after the career that he's had, and the punishment he had to go through to make the weight, I go, my concerns are that takes a lot out of a fight.
But under the
It's all about
circumstances, the
timing.
question was it the best we've seen of him? And under the circumstances, with the 18-foot ring, with the weight constrictions, with everything, not knowing whether his dad was going to come, the way he handled it, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. I thought Conor Benn was brilliant too, by the way.
Agreed.
But I thought Eubank Jr.'s performance, and as I said, the championship rounds, his dad mentioned that was superb.
My takeaway for what it's worth is I think the person that came out of that fight with the most credit was probably Conor, because Conor looked and brought a fight without Conor's participation in that fight, which sounds like it'll be obvious, but the way that Conor went about this fight, I think created the opportunity for the fight to be played out the way it was.
Do you know, even when we were there, Simon, 70,000 strong crowd there.
And he walked into a background.
He walked into a background. He walked into booze everywhere. But when he left that ring, he turned a lot of the public
and by the way, that's right,
because of the heroics that he showed.
But people should pack it in now, because ultimately, whatever we think about those two drugs tests, if you're going to boo people, then you can boo Tyson Fury and you can boo Canelo Alvarez. They've all failed drugs tests as well. If you're going to boo somebody, and he's now redeemed himself to some extent in terms of he's a clean athlete, he'll argue about the perspective.
I think he redeemed himself in the ring on Saturday night as well.
But what I wanted to close this section off with before we finish this bit, which is there is a rematch. When I saw the Saudis last week, they were already talking about the rematch before this fight. Obviously, Sello have got the ticket on that. I personally don't think we need to see the rematch. I think that Conor could go and win a world title. I think he can beat Barrios. I don't think he can beat Boots Ennis.
Yeah.
But I think you can go and win a world title at 147. Do you want to see this rematch?
Simon, I went in the early hours of the morning. Most people had left Tottenham. I went into Conor's dressing room. He was still there quite a long time afterwards, and he wants this rematch. He wants it because he was disappointed with his performance. He was disappointed with losing. I had to tell him, I said, mate, you were brilliant. You were fantastic. He was gutted. He was back in the gym this morning. I think he wants that rematch.
But if we were guiding voices for him, giving him sensible, he's gone into that fight. He's proved his point to some extent. He
didn't
made
win.
A huge amount. I know he didn't, but there was an expectation that the bigger man was always going to win. He's made a huge amount of money from that. If we were giving him advice, if you were giving him advice, Don, would you say to him, go rematch, go and fight at 147 and win a world title?
That type of fight is not recommended for anybody, the type of fight he had with Chris Eubank Jr. But nevertheless, by public demand, I would advise him, don't take that type of rematch. It's not good for your health.
For Conor and Chris.
For both of them. Listen, by public demand, the public want it financially.
The public do want it.
And financially rewarding.
And the common denominator here is the money. Where else are they going to fight, and what fight are they going to have to generate the type of income they'll get for that fight? And that's really what...
And you must respect that Conor would have elevated as a fighter from that performance. Chris, that would have taken a lot out of him. So,
Agreed.
You know, if the money's on the table...
Is it the same conditions? At what weight? If there were
both need a rest. Both need just everything to calm down a little bit.
If they were to fight again, at what weight?
At what weight?
Is Chris going to put himself through this?
Do you do it at 162, 163?
Well, like I said, the weight, that's so important. What weight?
If there is a rematch, I'll tell you one person that will be happy is Ben Shalom, because he's had a good week last week.
Very good week. Ben Whittaker as well.
Absolutely.